The only good tomato is a squashed tomato. Period. You remember when comedy was a genre? I kind of feel like the only genres left in movie theaters are Marvel movies, terminally ill teens that learn to love, and Tyler Perry movies. Now, to be fair, I did see Boo! A Madea Halloween, and it was hilarious. Now, I don't know if that's because the movie is genuinely funny or just I'm a little racist, but I mean, I guess both could be true. But man, back in the 80s, comedy was not just a bona fide genre, it was in a golden age. To be fair, everything in the 80s was in a golden age. Absolutely everything was rad. Nothing bad ever happened. Do not Google that. Just trust me, I was there. We were all just doing the Cabbage Patch and drinking Crystal Pepsi all day, day. Could someone take my Crystal Pepsi out of the snow and put it on the tarp so it doesn't freeze? Because I'd like to drink it later. And then maybe later I could entertain you with some of my drug-related stories. One of my big hang-ups on reviewing comedy and recommending comedy is really just how widely varied our individual comedic sensibilities are. I mean, something that tickles my funny bone is not necessarily going to tickle yours and vice versa. I mean, my God, James Rolfe actually liked the new Munsters movie. Like, we are all different people. You understand what I'm saying? So just because I'm going to talk about a movie that I consider to be one of my favorite comedies of all time, you still got to just experience it for yourself and make your own judgments.
Yeah, comedy is subjective. Except for Kindergarten Cop, that movie made $200 million. Everyone loves it. It is not subjective. It is objectively a success. It is the funniest movie.
Return of the Killer Tomatoes was released in 1988, and yes, as the return in the title implies, it is a sequel to, I think, 1978 or 9's. Should have looked it up, not going back. We're pushing forward. Attack of the Killer Tomatoes. I do want to say real quick, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes is a very charming, very funny movie. It's good. It ain't great. If you are new to the franchise, I'm going to recommend you start here with Return of the Killer Tomatoes. It is by far the highest peak in the franchise. It's just you put a little salt on a tomato, it's mwah. This right here is the chef's kiss of the franchise. 10 years ago, tomatoes turned against us. The Great Tomato War ended when we discovered that music was their weakness. Mankind beat back the villainous vegetables and outlawed tomatoes outright, so the pesky produce could not endanger us any further. But unbeknownst to everyone, the mad scientist behind the tomato's original murderous mutation was hard at work on his next evil scheme. Ladies and gentlemen, the maniacal Professor Gangrene. Well, hey, there's a good-looking fella. Gangrene is played by the wonderful John Astin, who hopefully you recognize as Gomez from the old Addams Family TV show. He is so much fun to watch. He's hamming it up like an open-faced Monte Cristo sandwich. John Astin is one of those actors who is just funny from his skin down into the core of his bones. He is just so much fun and so effortlessly funny. The heroes of our story are a couple of screwball pizza boys named Matt and Chad. They are young, dumb, and full of comedic antics. Okay. And yes, that is a young George Clooney. Hot damn, that guy's got a lot of hair. Clooney's comedic acting is charming, but it's also very dry and deadpan. And in a movie filled with performances that are on Looney Tunes level of wacky, it would be very easy to view him as the comedic weak link. But having a grounded voice of reason for the goofballs to bounce off of is really an essential element of comedy that Clooney does very well. Unfortunately, his character spends most of the movie trying to trick babes into having sex with him, which in 2022 is not a great look for your story's hero, but it was the 80s? And speaking of babes, I gotta talk about Tara. She's a sexy little tomato. And no, that's not a pet name. Tara is literally a tomato. I know it sounds dumb, but tomatoes mutating into people is really the main plot of the story. Tara was created to be Professor Gangrene's perfect woman, which she is. Too bad for him, he treats her like dirt, and she's not a complete idiot, so at first opportunity, she runs into the arms of our heroes, getting them mixed up in the whole stop Professor Gangrene's evil scheme and pushing the story forward. Honestly, though, I think when I was a kid, I was too distracted by Tara's hotness to pick up on how funny she was. While she was hiding her secret vegetable origin, her insane love of toast, her extremely open sex-positive attitude, she is played perfectly by Karen Waldron, who I'm sad to see, looking at her IMDb page, that she hasn't really done a ton of acting after this. And that's a shame, because she is incredibly funny and really deserves, I think, a better career than she got. Really, every character and actor in this movie, whether it's Igor, Gangrene's henchman who dreams of being a TV news anchor, or the snooty gay waiter at the restaurant, they're so much fun. But I gotta stop and talk about the snooty gay waiter. One of my favorite comedy stereotypes is the snooty waiter. The waiter who has nothing but disdain for the patrons of his restaurant. This may be the greatest snooty waiter ever committed to film. This guy is so funny. Is just the gay bitchiness is so good when he says, for the lady, I'd recommend the diet salad. But everybody in this movie, whether they were in a small role or a big role, they are so much fun to watch. The acting is so silly and so cartoony that there are a lot of people that are bad actors in this movie, but they're still incredibly fun to watch. It adds to the comedy somehow. And the comedy is unrelenting in a good way. It is a constant bombardment of jokes of every kind you can imagine. It's dry wit. It's boner comedy. It's silly. It's juvenile. It's sight gags. It's physical comedy. It's all over the place. And it's constantly hitting you, whether the dialogue is written well, but also there's constant background details. There's jokes on the production design is filled with jokes for you to read in the background. And I really appreciate that stuff isn't stuff you can just improvise on the day. That's stuff you have to plan. So much thought was put into constantly entertaining you. And I have so much appreciation for that kind of care and craft. Especially when you're talking about something so silly.
They say that dying is easy. Comedy is hard.
Now, as much as I would love to sit here and tell you all of my favorite jokes in the movie, that's not really much of a review, is it? So I will save that, watch the movie, have a good time. But I do want to highlight one specific running gag in the movie that kind of perfectly sums up, I think, the tone of the overall movie and the overall franchise in general, too. Partway through the movie, the production runs out of money. Suddenly it breaks the fourth wall and you're outside of the movie and you're in behind the scenes of the movie. And the director's like, we got to shut down the production. We're out of money. Everybody's upset and complaining. One actor's like, I turned down a pilot to be in this movie. George Clooney says, well, you know what we got to do? We got to get with the times. We got to start doing some product placement. And from that moment on, there's a scene that follows that is basically just constant, directly to the camera, selling you products. There's a part where Professor Gangrene has a Pepsi logo on his lab coat, on the back of his lab coat. The fact that they said, that's probably real product placement, and they had to do that to get the movie made. The movie, I think, was made for $1 million, which is not a ton of money to make a bona fide movie. It's got real actors, and back then you filmed on film and you had to hire crew, and there's only so far you can stretch that amount of money. So they probably had to really do product placement, but they said, let's make it a joke. Let's mine this thing we have to do. Let's mine it for all the comedy that it's worth. And again, it's the craft and the care put into something silly. And I appreciate it. And it's so wonderful. And and this is a little bonus that I wanted to point out too. It's not like it's not like doesn't make the movie better or worse, but I love the fact that because it's a low budget movie, because you can tell when they were filming out on the streets of San Diego in 1987 or 88, whenever they filmed, that, they couldn't block traffic. They couldn't, block pedestrians. All they could really do was go out on the street and film what they needed to film. And because of that, they capture this little slice of life of late 80s in San Diego. You get to see the buildings and some of the advertising. You get to see cars and the fashion and not like this idealized version of the 80s. We didn't have great haircuts in 1987, and we didn't have, maybe not necessarily the most flattering of jeans in 1987. And I love the fact that a movie like this will inadvertently create sort of this little time capsule of how things looked at that time. And it's fun to now go back and see all that stuff. It was just, I was 8 when I saw this movie for the first time, and when it was new. So now, as a 42-year-old ass man, it's fun to look back, and it's kind of like getting to look back to when I was 8. And it's fun. That's all. It's just fun. So if you have not given the Killer Tomatoes franchise a chance, I highly recommend you do. And I highly recommend you start with Return of the Killer Tomatoes. And if you like it, there's 4 of them. And yes, I do own them all on VHS, because why wouldn't I? So I guess that is it for today, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you to the subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, my God, hit that subscribe button. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the patrons. Gotta become a patron, but if you can, thank you very much. And as always, if weather, Juliet on yonder balcony. No. You know that whether you are a dirty dog sleeping in the sun or an alley rat eating up the night, well, heck, you're always welcome here at Hat Hole Home Video. Now, if you'll excuse me, I gotta get back to my Elvira pinball on the Atari Lynx. Man.
Leaving so soon? How about another ball?
Oh, you'd like that.